Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Dr. Rosalind Cohen, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
It is a real pleasure to be sitting down with you. You're joining us from San Francisco. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about broadening how people view commonalities to create cultures of inclusion and belonging. This is such an important conversation. We live in such a polarized world. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging has become so politicized, and it's hard to have any meaningful conversation around this topic nowadays because people just get so upset and so angry, and it's so sad to me because this doesn't need to be a politicized conversation. When you boil it down to the nuts and bolts of what this is all about, it's really just about treating people with dignity and respect, being kind to each other. And I think that's something that pretty much everyone agrees on,
Yeah.
Regardless of your political views, your socioeconomic background, whatever your religious perspectives, whatever your background or perspective may be. I think pretty much everyone agrees that we want to be kind to each other. We want to treat people with dignity and respect. But unfortunately, the DEI conversation has been largely co-opted politically, and it's just become, part of the culture wars. And so now we're in this place where we can't have conversations about it. And unfortunately, the needed work that needs to be done can't be done. And so we find ourselves in a logjam. So this is what we're going to be discussing today and try to figure out what is the path forward. How can we move forward productively in this current climate? As we get started, I wanted to share Roz's bio with everybody. Dr. Rosalind Cohen, aka Dr. Roz, is an entrepreneur, speaker, author, and connectifier who helps organizations build inclusive, radically connected cultures of belonging that benefit individuals and drive business growth. A rising thinker in the worlds of belonging and inclusion, Dr. Roz earned her PhD from the Leadership and Change program at Antioch University, completing her dissertation on the impact of inclusive leadership on employee engagement and organizational success. Founder of Socius Strategies, a private inclusion and belonging advisory practice, Dr. Roz spent 20 plus years in HR at the C level before making the leap to entrepreneurship. Today, she gives talks across the US, is an advisor to NASA, and is the author of a forthcoming book that answers the question, is there a connection between inclusive leadership, employee engagement, and organizational success? And spoiler alert, of course there is. And Dr. Roz Cohen is anything but your traditional HR lady. I love everything about that. I love your background. Anything you would like to highlight by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in?
No, I mean, I'm thrilled to be here. My background is what it is. More personally, I'm a native New Yorker, transplanted to San Francisco about 25 years ago. Mom of two young adults who are just left for college, and so I'm the empty nester in my empty nest phase. So that's just a bit more about me.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And I think about those days. I have a ways. I have two in college, and then I have four still at home. And but I'm approaching. I have maybe another 5-6 years before I might be at that stage where I am approximating empty nester stage. And I wonder, what is that going to be like? I have no idea. I can't wrap my mind around it, my head around it. But we'll see. We'll see what that's like, and maybe I'll call you back then and see how did you manage that.
Happy to help you along in that process. Absolutely.
Yeah, it'll be a journey, I'm sure. All right, so you did your doctoral work on this. Of course, you have all this decades of practitioner experience and C-level leadership experience in the space as well. What brought you to this work? And then we can start to dig into, why it's so important and where to go from here.
So it's a great, thank you for asking the question. So I grew up in New York, as I had mentioned, and was really impacted by my grandmother. She's the one who introduced me to Judaism more as a culture versus a
Hmm.
religion. And I consider myself more culturally than I do religiously Jewish. Well, one of the things that I learned through her was that there are these values that are important within Judaism. The two that resonate the most with me are tikkun olam and tzedakah. So tikkun olam means reparation of the world, and tzedakah means to give back. And don't come for me if I've screwed those up. This is my interpretation of those things. So when I got older and began to see sort of the world that we live in, they became really pronounced for me in figuring out how to do the work to repair the world, to make it a better
Mm.
place. While that sounds a little idealistic, I believe that I can have an impact in where I can. I'm not going to change the world totally, but I can definitely have an impact. So
Yeah.
what so that's how I got here, through a long and opportunistic path of professional work, working in finance and nonprofits and a variety of other organizations, and then came to start my own place, hung out my own shingle, as my father would say.
Yeah, well, and I agree. I think we all can influence the world. We all can be agents of change within our own sphere. And am I going to be a transformational agent of change globally and transform societies? Probably not. But can I, have influence in my home? Can I have influence in the organizations in which I work or consult? Absolutely. And can I make a difference in my team? Absolutely. So we do have influence in our spheres of influence. We absolutely can be agents of change, and I believe all of us should strive to be the change we want to see in the world. And that can be overwhelming though, because
Can
the
be.
world is the world is a messy place. The world
Yeah.
is and it's constantly bombarding us with
Yes.
the hard stuff, the negative stuff. And so to be agents of positive change means we have to be idealistic and we have to be optimistic
Right.
amidst the hard stuff that's constantly coming at us.
I agree, and I think we also need to be pragmatic, right?
Sure.
What you talked about influences, spheres of influence, and we I talk about that a lot in my work. Is that what do you have the immediate control over? What do you have the influence over? And what do you have concern about that you can't necessarily do anything with? And by focusing on those first two spheres, what do I have immediate control over, and what do I have influence over? You can make change, and you don't know what those. Influences end up doing for others who end up making different changes in other aspects of their lives and other aspects of their community. So the overwhelming can be countered a little bit by the what can I actually do and where can I actually have some impact versus, oh my gosh, the world is falling down and everything is horrible and there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. Like, take something like climate change, for example.
sure.
My goodness, it's
Right.
overwhelming, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I can still make choices. I can recycle. I can use solar. I can drive an electric vehicle. I can make choices that,
Right.
at least in my sphere, I have control over, and I can try to speak out, to influence others and blah blah blah. Right? I can do those things, and
Yes,
that's what I have control over. And
that's right.
so try not to get overwhelmed by what I don't have control
Right.
over, and try to move things forward in a positive way.
Right.
And what the danger is, if we allow ourselves to get overwhelmed, the danger is that then we retreat into
We
our
do
turtle
nothing. Yeah.
shell and then we would do nothing, right? And that's what we don't want.
No, and it's funny because when I was writing my PhD, I had this sign that hung on my desk that said, "How do you eat an elephant?" And it's one bite at a time. And so, if we think of change and we think of our impact on change in that way, you're not going to eat the whole elephant in one bite, but you can take nibbles at whatever it is that you're looking to change. And when we see it for that, it really does give us more it empowers us and gives us the agency, or at least the okayness to be able to go and do what it is that we think is important.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all of this is a really great kind of foundation for the rest of our conversation. So as we launch into this conversation around DEI and creating cultures of inclusion and belonging,
Yep.
recognizing that there's a ton of need here,
Yeah,
but it can be overwhelming because society is kind of messed up, right?
there's a
And
lot going on. Yeah,
there's a
absolutely.
lot going on, and politically and socially, and we had the George Floyd moment, which
Yeah,
swung the pendulum one direction. And I talked to a lot of people thinking, who thought at that point, okay, we passed this, we
yeah,
had this moment and we passed a certain threshold where things were getting better and better.
right.
Of course, now the pendulum's swinging back, and now people are feeling
Yeah.
overwhelmed. And so all of what we just said, I think, is a real good level set foundation
Hmm.
to remind ourselves that we need to keep pressing forward. Okay, so with that said, now I think it's also important to recognize uh, why this is also important. And I want to, without being trite, there's so much research on this. There's clearly a strong business case
Hmm.
for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It leads to better decision making. It leads to better bottom line outcomes for organizations, better
Absolutely.
productivity, better innovative thinking and creativity, et cetera, et cetera. We could list a whole bunch of things, and there's lots of
Absolutely.
research to back it all up. Um, of course, I would like to think that just as humans, we wouldn't even have to go there. Like we could just say from a moral, ethical, human
Sure.
perspective,
Right.
that
Absolutely.
should be enough. But even if it's not enough, that we can say, okay, at least from a business perspective, from a
Right.
bottom line perspective, it just makes dollars and cents sense, right? That
Right.
we do this. So if we can all just agree that it makes sense that we do, that we go down this path, that we try to foster safe space where
Hmm.
everyone can feel needed, wanted, valued, where they can have a sense of belonging and contribute in meaningful ways, that's better for everybody.
Right.
If we can agree on that, and I do think most people agree on that, then the question becomes, how do we do it? How do we actually do it, especially in this polarized
Yep.
moment where it's hard to even have a conversation?
So I actually would challenge that a little bit. I don't think we can all agree on that. And I think that's where the root of the problem is. I think that there are people that don't think that a diversity of opinion or perspective is a better thing. The work that I do absolutely includes this idea of diversity, and how do you have diverse ideas be a part of a space that allows these perspectives to make better decisions. But where I think we lose folks is this idea of belonging. Um, I would challenge that a culture of belonging where people feel valued for who they are,
Mm-hmm.
but also connected to others, is a better strive. So, what I'm saying is the unique qualities that you bring to an organization or you bring to a relationship, whether it's professional or personal, are also balanced with this connection that we have in whatever capacity and for whatever reason. So I joke with clients sometimes. I'm a mom of two young adults, and I knit. Right, that is my relaxation,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to
Yeah.
being on the phone while I'm watching television because just can't quite sit still. Um, but you wouldn't know that about me. You wouldn't know that I knit and knit blankets, mostly square objects. I knit blankets, scarves. I'm really good at square stuff. Um, but you wouldn't know that. So, how do we, as managers and as leaders, create space where people can share those identities that are not surface, that are not
Mm-hmm.
based upon race or gender or perceived gender or perceived anything else? So, what do you need to do in order to give people the opportunity to share that kind of information? And that's where inclusive leadership comes in. It is not, look, I would love to think that we would all create a space where everyone felt included and all voices are valued. And that's what we should continue to strive for. what I would think is the first step or the first bite in that elephant is, how do we create a space where people have the opportunity to share pieces of themselves that they normally would not be able to see? Like, let's just
Mhm.
start there. So if we can do that, and I can recognize that you and I both knit. So now, Jonathan, you're a knitter in my world. Um, if you and I have that chance to share that we have that commonality, naturally people will begin to open up and be able to have other conversations. So things like you being a white man and me being a white woman, the gender is not as nearly as important anymore as the fact that we have this commonality of knitting. That doesn't mean that those things are not important. But what we're saying is, how do we create a space of belonging that people can share identities that may not be immediately apparent, in order to learn about each other and maybe go, hey, maybe Jonathan's not a bad guy. And I had all these preconceived notions about who he is and what he does. And now that I know he's a knitter, maybe we have a little bit more in common than I anticipated. That, I think, that creating of that culture is really got to be a primary desire, and it's got to be part of the foundation of managers and leaders creating space for others.
Yeah, I like that. I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday that I think illustrates this really well. Um, she's had a career, a women in STEM. Okay, so and I was asking, what has your experience been? I was actually sharing an experience that my daughter had had. She's a sophomore in college, where she had to deal with a misogynistic kind of jerk team partner, a dude who is just treating her bad, and I knew that she, has had a career in STEM. I'm like, what has it been like for you as a woman in STEM? Especially, hopefully things are getting better, but like, 20 years ago
Right.
even. And and she expressed exactly what you just expressed. That for most of her career, she was the only woman in the
Sure.
room. And it often was an issue. It often was challenging. And so her approach often was, okay, let's find commonalities with these men. Let's find other ways to connect with these men. And often she was from the Midwest, the upper Midwest, and often it was the fact that she played hockey.
Sure.
She had played hockey in high
Right.
school and even in college. And
Right.
so as soon as men who otherwise dismissed her and treated her,
Right.
in ways they shouldn't, but then they found out she played hockey. And then
Right.
because they realized she played hockey, now she was kind of part of the team.
Right.
And is that right? No. Should they treat her that way, one way, because they didn't know
Absolutely.
she played hockey? Now they
Totally.
treated her better because she played hockey. No, that's not right. But she learned that if she could have that commonality with them and express that now they had a connection point, and now they could work well together and they could understand each other, and it broke down barriers. That's to your
Right.
point,
That's
right?
exactly right.
And
No, that's exactly right.
and so, what are those ways that we can break down barriers and we can have a more commonality with people who may be inclined to put up walls, who may be inclined, to treat us in ways that aren't appropriate? And as frustrating as it may be, because someone might have some sexism or whatever the thing might be, uh, let's the more we're exposed to difference, the more we start to learn that difference isn't bad, and the more that
That's
we start to recognize that there's value in it. But when we have the barriers up, we don't expose ourselves to it,
yeah.
and so those commonalities start to build bridges.
So, people fear what they don't know, right?
Right.
They fear something that they have limited exposure to. So if you are a white person coming from the Midwest and you have never encountered a Jewish person like me, there's a fear because all of these stereotypes and all of these things that we've been programmed to know, allegedly, about a Jewish person is there. That's what's in the front of my mind. As a matter of fact, a really quick funny story is I moved from New York to Muncie, Indiana. I was working at Ball State University, and shout out to Ball State University. This is not about you at all. It's just this is also a long time ago. And I was at the Kroger. I was Krogering, as they called it, shopping for food and such. And I pulled out a check because I'm that old. And my license was a New York license, but my check was an Indiana check. And the woman at the register said to me, huh, what kind of name is Cohen? And like, I know where she's coming from. I'm like, well, it's a Jewish name. She said, oh, I've never met a Jewish person before. Can I ask you a question? So in my head, because I'm a bit, of a sarcastic human, I was like, oh God, this is going to be good. And her question to me was, why did my people kill Jesus? Now, what's interesting about that is I had never heard that before. I grew up in New York. That had never been something that I had encountered. And B, like, how at some level brave was it of this woman to actually ask the question? So we talked for a little bit. I came up with a bit of a sarcastic response, which was, I don't know, I wasn't there. But then we talked a little bit, and we were, talking about religion and people and values and sort of how, Jewish culture is really about family and connecting and being a greater purpose and doing more. And the more we talked, the more there was that commonality there, right? The more there was just like, well, yeah, that's sort of like my family too. So when we fear what we don't know, we put these barriers up. So inclusive leaders need to provide opportunities for people to share who they are to the level and extent that they are able to do so. And they can do that in a couple of ways. One, by literally giving the people an opportunity during the course of a meeting to say, okay, tell us one thing about something you do at home that is part of your natural routine, or tell us something about a food that's really important in your culture, or you can come up with a variety of ways. And while it may seem prescribed, it won't be after time. It's not about a one and done. It's about continuing to create the
Right.
space for people to share that. The other thing that you can do is recognize that you have different types of people within your team or within your group, and they have different ways in which they come at information. So one of the things I talk with clients about is, if you don't send out an agenda in advance of a meeting or don't follow up with notes afterwards, you are losing a whole group of introverts and folks that may need a little more processing time before they respond. You're missing that whole group. And all you're hearing from are the folks like me who immediately can give you an answer or give you an opinion. I'm real good at giving an opinion about something. So you don't provide the space for folks like that to be able to really contribute fully. So these are really simple ways that you can create the space for people to talk about who they are and share what they're comfortable in sharing, that allows those connections to happen that may not normally happen.
Yeah, I like that. Simple little mechanisms, ways that people can flex that muscle,
Absolutely.
get used to it, right? Of just sharing. In fact, just earlier this morning, I was in a meeting where in that group we practice this, and it's just a simple, common thing that in our weekly staff meeting
Sure.
we do this and we share something about our week, and it's a simple little thing. It's a simple way that we're able to get to know each other, and
That's exactly
we
right.
we all have different backgrounds. We
Right.
all have different worldviews. We all, and in this case, it was just after Thanksgiving, and so we all had different experiences with family or with different things that we did. And as we went around the room, there were 8 different people in the room, and my goodness, there were 8 completely different types of things that were
Totally.
shared. And it's really beautiful though, because and you could see, because we've done it enough that everyone felt completely comfortable
Mhm.
sharing their completely different types of things,
Right.
that and we learn new things about each other.
Right.
And yeah, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. And
And I
you
would
don't.
bet.
and you don't get to that immediately,
No, you don't. No,
right? But
that's a
you
key
can
piece.
over time, and it's not complicated. But it's just a simple thing. You take 5-10 minutes at the beginning of a
That's it.
meeting once a week, right?
Right. It doesn't have to be sort of this grandiose kind of offsite where we're all sitting around and spilling our guts to each other. It really is about consistency. It's about a place of respect where I can hear what you're saying, you can hear what I'm saying. And I would bet that after that staff meeting, someone turned to somebody else and said, "Hey, tell me more about this,"
Mm,
or "I
yeah.
didn't know about that." So, what does that happen? That is about inquisitiveness. It's about intellectual curiosity. It's about wanting to learn more. So, there's that piece that once you start to open these doors, you get the opportunity for people to connect in ways that they may not have um, had the opportunity to do before. And that's a key part of being an inclusive leader, is being able to provide space for people to share connections. And what happens then is that they realize that they belong to something bigger than themselves. Everybody knows this sort of intellectually, but when you're sitting around a group of people and you're all sharing in your example, what you did on Thanksgiving, you realize that people are listening to one another and they feel a part of something bigger than themselves, which is your team and your group. They don't lose their diversity, they don't
Yeah.
lose what makes them unique, but they have the opportunity to connect with others.
Roz, I note the time. We're going to have to wrap up here in just a minute. Maybe as we start to close, if you were to suggest, you've already given some great suggestions, but if you were to like point out one specific thing, one step that companies could do, leaders could do starting today to start to create that culture of belonging and connection, what would
Mhm.
that be?
One of the things I think as leaders, we think we have to have all the answers and we don't. So a manager could sit down with their team and go, "I want to create a space where people feel more connected and as though they belong to both the group and the organization. What
Mhm.
would you suggest we do?" Your people know the answer. People know what they want. They just need also an opportunity to share it. If you create that space, it does two things. One, it gives people the chance to share the information. And two,
Mhm.
it shows that you are interested and willing to hear what others say, which is the beginning of creating an inclusive and connected environment. So that would be my state. I would say, look, this is where I want us to be. What kind of suggestions do you have that we could do together in order to create that space? Bring them, people own what they create. So help them create it.
I love it. Great, great suggestion. This has just been a great conversation. As we wrap up, please share with us, how can the audience get connected, find out more about your work? Where can they find your book?
So my website is very simple. It's drroscohen.com. So it's my name, makes it easy to find. My book will be coming out in probably the middle of next year. And the title, working title at this point, is the hashtag hiring for engagement. And what we talk about is that how do you create communities and how do you create opportunities for organizations to both hire for engagement and to train managers for engagement. And that really is about connection, belonging, and inclusion.
I love it. I love it. I really encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Roz can do for you. Keep an eye out for this upcoming book. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. You could probably get a preview by searching up her dissertation
Yeah.
in the meantime.
If you're
Um,
bored and need something to help you fall asleep, please feel free.
yeah, wonderful. Roz, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And for the audience, as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.